Welcome to Theater Talk. I'm Ed Schoaps. Co-host Ann McBride and I are here the first and third Fridays of the month to tell you about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Ed, and welcome, theater lovers. Here on Theater Talk, we interview interesting guests about great shows happening at theaters throughout the Mid-Valley. Joining us first today on KMUZ Theater Talk, director Debbie Neel and actors Victoria Venard and Christoper Schoaps from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, opening August 11th at Pentacle Theatre in Salem.
And in our second segment, we'll talk with director Diane Allen and actors Eli Nicholas and Curtis Allen from the Mid-Valley Musical Theater production of Newsies at the Albany Performing Arts Center. But first, let's check our KMUZ Theater Talk calendar and see what else is on the boards. Ann?
Albany Civic Theater at albanycivic.org. Albany Civic's summer theater camp students will perform My Son, Pinocchio Jr., August 18th through 26th. And next up, the Savannah Sipping Society opens September 15th and plays through the 30th.
Brush Creek Playhouse at brushcreekplayhouse.com. On stage through August 13th is the melodrama The Rustler's Revenge, directed by Norman Gouveia. Brush Creek Playhouse is also calling for directors to propose for shows at their playhouse and for actors to audition. If you're looking to be on stage or direct, they'd love to hear from you at brushcreekplayhouse.com.
The Elsinore Theater at elsinoretheater.com. For info about local events and touring shows on stage at the Elsinore, go to elsinoretheater.com or their Facebook page.
Enlightened Theatrics Summer Camp 2023 runs August 14th through 25th. It has expanded class offerings for middle and high school students and an introductory theater class for elementary kids. For more information, go to enlightenedtheatrics.org.
Gallery Theater at gallerytheater.org. Pride and Prejudice is playing through August 13th at Gallery Theater. Check out our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for an interview with director Katrina Godders and the actor Derek Moore from the show. Gallery Theater is also celebrating its 55th anniversary with a gala on August 19th. And auditions for Gallery's production of Puffs are happening August 22nd and 23rd from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. at the theater. Sign up at the auditions link at gallerytheater.org. And Matilda the Musical comes to the main stage at Gallery Theater September 8th through October 1st.
At the Majestic Theater in Corvallis, and they're at majestictheater.org, and on Facebook at the Majestic Theater. Their summer youth camp production of Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors plays at the Majestic August 24th through 26th. And November 4th through 19th, Kander and Ebb's hit musical Cabaret will be on stage at the Majestic Theater in downtown Corvallis. Get tickets for these shows at majestic.org.
Mid-Valley Musical Theater at mvmtheater.org and on Facebook at Mid-Valley Musical Theater. Mid-Valley Musical Theater presents the musical Newsies, August 11th through 19th in the Albany Performing Arts Center at West Albany High School. We learn more from director Diane Allen and actors Eli Nicholas and Curtis Allen from Newsies later in today's Theater Talk program.
Pentacle Theatre is at pentacletheater.org, and Pentacle has announced its 2024 season of shows at the Salem Art Fair and Festival. Check our Theater Talk podcast to learn more about what's coming to Pentacle in 2024. And opening August 11th and running through September 2nd at Pentacle is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. That's directed by Debbie Neel. And we'll talk with Debbie and cast members Christoper Schoaps and Victoria Venard from the show later in today's episode of KMUZ Theater Talk. Joe Dodge's acting workshop for actors 18 and older is at Pentacle Theatre's rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. To sign up, go to tickets.pentacletheatre.org.
The Salem Playhouse at thesalemplayhouse.com. Salem Playhouse also offers acting classes for both kids and adults at Kaiser Homegrown Theater and adult classes at Chemeketa Community College. To sign up, go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click on the Classes tab.
Spotlight Community Theater at spotlightct.com is calling for play proposals from directors for their 2023-24 season. Apply now to info@spotlightct.com.
Struts and Frets Theater Company at strutsandfretstheater.org. Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale is coming to Struts and Frets August 16th through 19th at Eola Hills Wine Cellars on Highway 99 in Rickreall. Check out our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for an interview with director Hannah Fawcett and 2 actors to learn more about the show.
Theater 33 at Willamette University is at theater33.org, and Theater 33 is winding up its new play Summer Festival of Works by Pacific Northwest Playwrights on August 10th through 13th with The Names by Paul Lewis. It's directed by Rob Sabalos, and that's followed by A Tale of Two by Angela M. Gurko on August 19th and 20th. Check out our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for an interview with Susan Coromel and Thomas Nabhan to learn more about Theater 33.
Willamette University at wutheater.com. They are talking about their season, and it kicks off October 26th through November 12th with the world premiere of In the Deep, a new musical with book and lyrics by E.M. Lewis and music by Clarence Roscoe McDonald. That wraps up this week's Theater Talk calendar.
Coming up next, we'll hear from show director Debbie Neel and actors Christoper Schoaps and Victoria Venard from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, opening August 11th at Pentacle Theatre in Salem. Stay with us.
Let us welcome our guests, director Debbie Neel and actors Victoria Venard and Christoper Schoaps from the production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, opening August 11th at the Pentacle Theatre. Welcome to Theater Talk, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks.
There is a familiar last name in this program. Just to be clear, Chris is my eldest son and a fine actor, and I'm busting my buttons with pride in this show. So that said, Debbie Neel, the director of the show, you have chosen a play to bring to the Pentacle Theatre stage that is one of the most interesting scripts that I've read in a long time. I read the book as well, which really got me into this story. What is it that brought you, Debbie, to bring this play to the Pentacle Theatre stage?
First of all, I read the book not very long after it first came out, and I was in love with the story. And then when I found out that it had been adapted into a play, I was so intrigued by how this could be done, having read the book. After reading the play, I began to form a vision of how we could do this at Pentacle. It is difficult, it is very, very complex, but it is an amazing story. And I'm so excited to bring this unique theatrical experience to the Pentacle stage. I have a very hardworking cast, a wonderful creative team, and it will be wonderful.
Well, the play is challenging. Can you give us just a quick synopsis of the plot?
Christoper Boone, character in the play, struggles with social interaction, and they are elements of what we would term being on the spectrum. He struggles in the world, which to him is chaotic and doesn't make sense, because he wants a very structured view of the world. And so it is a play that takes us into Christoper's world and actually tells this story from his perspective.
He makes a terrible discovery at the beginning of the show, right?
Oh, he does. He finds the neighbor's dog in the garden, murdered, as he puts it. The dog has been killed with a gardening implement, and he sets out to do detective work to determine who killed the dog. And that is the beginning of the detective part of the story.
But it's also a family story because there are elements of the father and the missing mother and whatever.
It's very much a family story. I think the story actually is about how we live and interact with others. Not just family, but friends or people we don't even know, people we meet on the street, perhaps. It's about family, it's about love, it's about the importance of honesty and truth and the difficulty of telling the truth and sometimes of the difficulty of hearing the truth.
What do you want audiences to take from this play?
I want audiences to see that we're all unique. Some of us are more unique than others, but we are all okay in our uniqueness. And we shouldn't be frightened of somebody who's different. We should welcome differences. It's not a play about disability at all. It's a play about differences and the acceptance of differences. And it is also very much a play about learning to grow and go beyond what you might expect of yourself or others might expect of you.
So, Christoper, where do you fit into this? What attracted you to this play, and what do you feel you have to give?
Well, I actually first read this show a few years ago when I was in high school. We read through the play and watched some videos of different productions, and I fell in love with the abstract nature of the play and the underlying themes too, like Debbie was talking about, of differences and how we approach those differences, as well as the theme of just like family and understanding and connecting with your family and sticking through it no matter what. Those themes really speak to me. At the moment when I read through this show initially, I was just in love with the presentation of all the characters, the abstract nature of the way that the production is put on. There's nothing really like chronological about the performance, which is very interesting. It gets a little more chronological in the second act, but the first act is kind of very much a collection of different events from Christoper's perspective that all kind of fit together. It's very, very interesting production to put on. Part of the reason why I was immediately drawn to it is I'm neurodivergent myself, and I see a lot of myself and a lot of my loved ones in Christoper Boone. It's very important to me that he, is portrayed respectfully and accurately, and that he's neurodivergent people in the theater are given the chance to express themselves and express who they are, and really get that idea out there that, again, we have differences, but they're just a part of who we are.
Right.
What's been the biggest personal challenge for you, Chris, in bringing your character alive?
Part of the challenge for me has been really, wrapping my head around the differences between Christoper and myself, because there are some differences in the way that our neurodivergencies present. So it's been kind of a challenge. Things even as simple as this kid really, 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 really likes math, and I am the complete opposite. He had, special interests in outer space and stuff, which do fascinate me. But he's like whip smart in ways that I struggle. he struggles a little more socially than I do as well. It's been a challenge kind of approaching that. I mean, we have an amazing autism expert. She's come out to a production and gave me a lot of really amazing advice on what I was doing right, and where I could improve. And that's been really helpful. And another challenging thing too has just been the level of emotional intensity that this show has. Without, spoiling too much about the plot, Christoper has several moments where he has meltdowns. It's pretty challenging to kind of get there every night and bounce back from that too, because it goes right into another scene that's casual. That's been a challenge, kind of being able to figure out, as a neurodivergent person myself who does experience meltdowns, how to approach that while being careful with myself, and also, how to turn it on and off easily.
That's the part that I was thinking of when you talked about how involved you are. I wonder if an hour after the show or rehearsal, if you can be yourself again instead of wrapped up in that character.
It's been really difficult. I mean, I've been trying to figure out how to kind of get a little more back into my own body. It's, mostly just doing physical things. Again, Christoper does a bunch of physical stuff. That much has been super, super helpful. Is I'm allowed to do things like fidget on stage. I have stim toys, fidget toys that I'm using after like really heavy scenes if I need to really like center myself, and
that's really good.
Calm down a little bit, which is nice. Yeah, it's awesome. So that's been helping. The cast is absolutely super supportive. I love everyone who's in the production. They're amazing. They're there for me. Debbie's there for me. Victoria's there for me. And then I my partner sometimes comes when I'm having, a more difficult day, just for support. So
yeah, sure. Speaking of Victoria, how do you fit into this play?
So I have been given the opportunity to play Siobhan. She is Christoper's teacher. So I get to kind of come alongside, and in many ways that how Christoper gets to be this very real portrayal of somebody who is different and on the spectrum and struggles with reality. She gets to come in and be that assistance and be parallel along with him.
How do you affect the happenings of the play?
Well, the character of Siobhan is actually really interestingly created. She is his teacher, but in the play, she's also the narrator. So there are several moments where she is narrating what is happening on the stage, kind of directly behind me. And so the audience gets to visually see what's happening, but then also hear Christoper's perspective on what's happening. And so sometimes in plays, when we're watching it, we're bringing our perspective to what we see. But by including Siobhan as the narrator, we get to hear what's going on in Christoper's mind as these events are unfolding.
Do you think the audience will get a picture of how the mind worked for an autistic person? Do you think you're kind of a link between the audience and Christoper?
Yes and no. For your first question of, do I think this will give the audience a glimpse into the mind of an autistic person? I think autism is so incredible because it manifests so differently. And we call it a spectrum because it truly is a spectrum. There are so many different ways that it presents. There are so many different levels of assistance that is needed versus some levels of independence that a neurodivergent person can have. We know that it manifests differently in men versus women. It can change and adapt over time as people have different tools for assistance. And so I think trying to give people a glimpse into the mind of an autistic person would kind of be as impossible as trying to give someone a glimpse into the mind of an American. That we can show one experience, but we can't show the experience of everybody who's on the spectrum. And so while this does give a glimpse into Christoper Boone's experience, and it can illuminate and help people understand of, oh, I now can understand what this portion is like. Like I can visually see what overwhelmed and being overstimulated might look like for somebody who interprets the world differently than I do. I think it might be too much to say it's an experience of all people with autism.
Right.
But I do
Right.
think it helps. Siobhan's character does give a very clear glimpse into what's going on in Christoper's mind. And so at times, if he's overstimulated or overexcited or just not necessarily able to articulate his words, Siobhan can step in and use these words and prove Christoper is there. He's thinking. He's so incredible of a character. I really love the character of Christoper Boone because he just is awesome. And Siobhan can be that bridge between the audience to Christoper and really help them understand everything that he's seen and experiencing.
That's wonderful.
Debbie, who are some of the other main characters in this play?
Christoper's father, Ed Boone, who is played by Robert Henry. The character Judy, who is Christoper's mother, played by Penny Bays. There are 6 actors who make up an ensemble, and those 6 actors actually play multiple roles. They almost operate at times more like a Greek chorus, and then other times they're people who Christoper needs to interact with. The ensemble is made up of 6 what we call voices. Voice 1 is played by Teresa Waite. Voice 2 is played by Wade Moran. Voice 3 is played by Joe Martin. Voice 4 is played by James Schmidt. Voice 5 is played by Kat Baird. And voice 6 is being played by Pamela Bilderbeck.
Okay, I want to circle back to Chris here for just a second. Because time and place are fluid in this show, how do you stay grounded in your character as the plot unfolds?
We have a few moments during transitions where I will be doing something actively, like, drawing on a tablet or writing in a notepad, kind of grounding myself, figuring out how the thoughts from the previous scene flow into the next, even if it's a scene from the past or a scene from far in the future. That's helped a lot with staying grounded and recognizing where I am in the moment. But it's been a real struggle, especially with the first part of the show, getting a grasp on where the next scene is leading. Getting a handle on the order of events.
And the ensemble actors do the scene changes. So is that helpful as well for you?
Yes, that's a little helpful. There's a few times, only a few times where I'm having to, switch a prop that I'm holding or like a cube or a table on stage. But for the most part, I can recognize a little better when someone comes on stage. Oh, that's the scene. That's made it a little easier. But the first couple of scenes, there's like the first half of the first part is like going back and forth in between present and past, and all of the scenes are labeled just with the location that they're in. So there's like 5 scenes entitled school and 10 entitled home. And
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So that's also been a little challenging to recognize we're home now. Which scene is it? But Debbie's been really great about giving us solid blocking of putting us in different locations, but a similar layout of like the cube structures that we have, just so that we know where we are a little bit better. I only have a couple of times where I actually leave the stage. I am on stage and in every single scene, so I don't really have time to look at a list or a script to recognize where I am. It's just all has to stay in my head.
I might jump in here and add to this one thing that will help our actors and will also help the audience. We have Liz Rogers designing projections and sound for this show, which are massive. There are wonderful, beautiful projections that we see during scenes, we see in the transitions that do help notify audience as well as actors where we are, what time of day it might be, and so forth. My creative team is amazing, and I have to give them credit for putting in hours and hours and hours on this show.
Debbie's also been really awesome about giving us so many run-throughs that we will have rehearsal after rehearsal where it's run part one, run part two, run part one, run part two, so that the actors get a feel for what comes next. And so even if we have scenes and moments that we're like, wait, why are we suddenly here? We've now run these different parts so many times. It starts to feel as though we just know what's coming next, because she's blocked out just huge amounts of time during rehearsals to run all the way through part one and then all the way through part two. And the next day, so that we do get to do it. So we have only had a few moments that I think all of us just stand on stage and we have the next scene set, but we look at each other like, hold on, what are we doing? We've had only a few moments like that where we all get completely lost, because Debbie's been awesome at giving us the opportunity to just run through a full act very early on.
It's the transitions that are really hard. Yeah.
The Tony Award-winning play, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, opens August 11th at Salem's Pentacle Theatre. It's a modern drama about an exceptional teen who vows to solve a gruesome mystery. Tickets are available at the pentacletheatre.org website and at the Pentacle Theatre office at the corner of Liberty and Ferry Street. Thank you, Debbie Neel, the director, Victoria Venard, and Christoper Schoaps, the actors in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, for joining us here on Theater Talk.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
In just a moment, we'll hear from director Diane Allen and actors Eli Nicholas and Curtis Allen from the Mid-Valley Musical Theater production of Newsies, opening August 11th in Albany. We'll be right back with more KMUZ Theater Talk. And we're back with Diane Allen, the director of Newsies at the Mid-Valley Musical Theater at the Albany Performing Arts Center in West Albany High School. And that show opens August 11th and runs through the 19th. We also have two actors from the show, Eli Nicholas, who plays Jack Kelly, the lead actor, and Curtis Allen, who plays Davey, the supporting lead. Welcome, Diane, Eli, and Curtis to Theater Talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Ed. It's good to be here.
Diane, Mid-Valley Musical Theater is the newest theater in the Mid-Valley. You're just starting out with your very first season. Tell me a little bit about Mid-Valley Musical Theater and how it came to be.
So the actors that are involved in our theater, many of them have done productions at our local high schools and our local community theaters. And when the bond measure passed to build a nice new performing arts center on the campus of West Albany High School, we felt like we wanted to allow everyone in our community, including alumni and current students and grown-ups and children alike, to be able to use that beautiful new space during the summer when it wasn't filled up with school performances. Many of us have been involved in previous productions together. We had the idea to form a group that could utilize that space in the summer, started spreading the word, and that's kind of where it became.
Wow, that sounds like a great community effort. How are you doing so far in your first season?
Well, we have, I would say, just in this production alone, over 100 people that are involved. We had 90 that auditioned for the show. We had an email list of over 100 folks to begin with that were just interested in finding out more about it and supporting from behind the scenes and on the stage. So we've got a fairly large following of theater-minded folks in the area, many of which have been involved in other theaters and some that haven't done theater in this area yet, who were excited about the idea of starting something new. This is our first production, but this company has been in the works, I'd say, for at least the last 5 years as the new auditorium was being built, and we talked about ways to use it.
Well, your first production is Newsies, and it's a very popular musical. Seems like it's still always on tour. It's about the newsboy strike in 1899. It's a really energetic production. What attracted you to bring this particular play to the Mid-Valley Musical Theater stage, Diane?
When it first came out as a movie musical in 1993, it kind of bridged the gap between folks who loved musical theater and those who weren't sure they loved musical theater. It had a great cast, it had fun music, it had a historical background and a cause you couldn't really help but rally behind. And there were a lot of folks who didn't really think they liked musical theater who loved that movie. So it wasn't a big hit at the time it was released, but it gained a following as some years passed. And that's kind of where my family got interested in musicals. We watched that one, and I have 3 boys and 1 girl, and my boys even loved it. And so for me, it felt like just a really great, fun, family-friendly story with some great music and a lot of entertainment value. And it helps that it's also that it's historical, that it has its base in things that actually happened, which I think really helps the cast to relate to their characters, knowing that these are people that actually went through this.
Well, this show is Disney all the way, but you also mentioned that it has a cause you can get behind. What is that cause, and what are the themes and messages that the musical conveys?
So in 1899, the newspapers were delivered by Newsies or newsboys who carried them around under their arm, and they had to pay for them up front. And whatever they made was what they took home, and any papers they didn't sell, they had to eat their profits on that. So it was just a time in history when children felt like they didn't necessarily have a voice for their own rights. And through the course of this story, they discovered that they do have a voice when they band together. And so I feel like one of the main takeaways from this is that when you're united with people who believe the same as you can make a difference. And when you believe enough in your cause, you'll be heard. And that's what these newsboys did in 1899. It's a message that is still in effect today.
So tell me, how are you going to stage this show? Are you doing like a unit set, or are you having different elements come in on during different times on the set? How's that going to work?
So the brand new auditorium at West Albany, it's a state-of-the-art facility. It has all kinds of bells and whistles that we're continuing to get acquainted with. But we decided to stage this one pretty true to the Broadway template, which uses 3 large towers, kind of scaffolding looking towers, and they get reconfigured throughout the show. Those are the main pieces that we work with, and they move around in different places to let us know where different scenes are happening. There's also a couple of other pieces that get brought in. We have the entrance to Pulitzer's office, which is a large door and windows and framed pictures that flies in. So we're utilizing that and a couple of other rolling pieces. But these towers are the focus of our set, and they have multiple levels, stairs and ladders, and moving parts on them as well. And they move pretty easily, and the cast members will be doing most of the moving of these towers as we change from scene to scene. It'll be seamless scene changes, which means we're not going to be closing the curtain and taking a break while we reconfigure the set. It'll all happen in front of your eyes. So for me, as an audience member, that's one of the things I enjoy, is watching the way that the scene changes happen, and the audience will get to experience that with us.
There's a lot of young people in this cast, and it's an energetic production. There are also adult parts. How much of a cross-section of the community did you cast in this show? Is it mostly young people? Does it include adults as well?
We do have adults. We found that the highest percentage of those auditioning were young people, because the greatest interest was in being Newsies. And that's not even just necessarily to be lead Newsies, but any Newsie role involves a lot of singing and dancing. And so most of the folks who auditioned were interested in singing and dancing. We do have 20% of our cast are adult roles. The rest are young people. Our Newsies are not all under the age of 18. We have some Newsies in their 20s who have been waiting for this show to happen, and managed to convey that youth in their audition that we were able to cast them as Newsies as well.
So are there any particular challenges or opportunities in this show that you felt were intriguing, or that you worked through?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest challenge in this show has been the choreography. And so right from the get-go, we reached out to all of the choreographers we'd worked with in the past to see who was interested, and they were all interested in being a part of this show. They love Newsies. They love the challenge of the dance element in this show. And so we have actually 7 different choreographers that worked on this show. The trick for me was splitting up who was going to be in charge of which musical numbers so that they could all have a part of it. And that's been really fun because that means all of the dances have a little bit different style because they were choreographed by different people. So it's not like you're going to be watching the show and thinking, oh, we've now seen that same move 3 or 4 times. Each number looks different because they were done by someone different. But it was exciting to see the interest and enthusiasm that our choreographers had for just working on this particular show.
That sounds really exciting. You know, the music by Alan Menken, who has done so many musicals for Disney, both live musicals and animated versions, lyrics by Jack Feldman. And this is really intriguing to me. The book by Harvey Firestein really, I think, gives you a solid platform to build this show.
Yeah, it really does. And when I saw the difference between the movie, the original movie, and the stage production, I have to say the stage production is definitely a step up in theater quality, in my opinion. The change of the character from male to female for the reporter added a romantic element, which is intriguing and fun, and added a great duet with Jack and Catherine. The changes in songs were wonderful. There's a few minor lyric changes that just made the lyrics settle a little better with audiences, which I think were also an improvement. So I thoroughly enjoy the theater version of this show.
Eli Nicholas, you're playing the lead character, Jack Kelly. How would you describe your character and his role in the story?
Yeah, Jack Kelly is, he's a kid in New York who has had to grow up much too fast. And that's really what I think a lot of it comes down to. He's 17 years old. Both of his parents, they have both passed away, and he's living alone, or rather with some of his newsy friends on the streets of New York. Like Dan said, set in 1899, right, just before the turn of the century, and having to make his own way in the world and just barely getting by, right, selling newspapers. And so his arc throughout this story is not just him trying to get by, but realizing that he has a greater role in not just helping him survive, but all of his friends who are selling papers together and working together to create, you know, this organized labor, this union, in order to bargain for a fair contract.
For sure. So what challenges and opportunities do you think your character presents for you as an actor?
He's kind of a ringleader. As far as personality types, I could not be farther from that. He is just a total loudmouth go-getter. And so in a lot of ways, I've had to tune, you know, my habits and voice, how I stand, to try to project a lot more, maybe assertiveness is the right word.
Swagger,
absolutely. Yeah. And so kind of reconstructing my sort of habits has been a big part of my preparation for the role.
And what about you, Curtis Allen? Your role is Davy, and that's one of the supporting lead roles. Tell me a little bit about your character and his role in the play.
So Davy's he's just a kid who's totally out of his element. His backstory is that his dad is a trolley worker, and he suffers an injury and gets laid off. And so suddenly his family is without an income. And so he and his younger brother, Les, they decide to go out and sell newspapers to support their family while their dad is recovering and before he finds work. He's more of like a middle-class character. Socioeconomically, he's totally different from the rest of these guys. He has a family, he's got stability, he's got a place to live. And so for him to be tossed into this right at this moment, you know, right when the price gets hiked up, is chaos. I mean, it's insane for him. He's just totally in a foreign world with foreign people. So he's kind of, you know, he's this bookish, anxious, insecure, really cautious character, which is a perfect foil, I think, for Jack. I mean, everything that Eli just said about Jack, you could say the opposite about Davy. He's not a ringleader at all. And he's super, super hesitant, but he knows a lot. He's super smart, and he has a firm moral compass, and he cares about the people that are close to him. And so, yeah, the way that he supports Jack and supports these Newsies in this time of crisis is super, super cool.
So Diane mentioned that the Newsies cast, of course, has a lot of energetic young Newsies that sing and dance a number of times in the show. What is your memorable moment, Curtis, or scene from the play that you particularly enjoy performing?
Davy has a really clear arc, more so than perhaps others of the Newsies, because this is also new to him. You can see how he comes into his own and how he gains confidence and how he grows to care about these people and becomes a leader because he's forced to be a leader in this situation. And at the end of the show, I mean, there's a scene in Pulitzer's office where you've got Jack and Catherine and Davy confronting Mr. Pulitzer, right? We see from Jack exactly what we've been seeing the whole time, which is that he knows what's right and he cares about these kids and he's going to do what's right and he's not afraid of anyone. But in that moment, we see Davy step up and talk back to Mr. Pulitzer. For me, that's super inspiring to see this change, this dynamic arc for Davy. And they sing this just incredible song towards the end of the show called Once and For All. Probably my favorite song of the show. And to watch Davy's role in that song in particular, to see him step up and lead, is probably my favorite part of playing Davy.
Eli, what part of the play do you find is most compelling or resonant to your character?
There is a moment early on in the show when Pulitzer, the owner of the newspaper, has hiked up the prices for the Newsies, throwing everything into disarray. And Jack is there thinking everything through with all of his friends, and a lot of them start to give up, and they say, well, we just got to pay this price. Otherwise, I mean, we have no other choice, right? We got to start paying more and just selling more in order to survive. And at that moment, Jack's starting to think through, well, what can we do? And really the entire scene is built around the Newsies, and Jack especially, basically coming up with this idea of organized labor from whole cloth, right? They really haven't had any examples shown to them of what it's like. And as this is happening, Davy is off to the side, and Davy's like presenting all of these obstacles, right? Because Davy is a little bit smarter. He knows that it's not easy to start a union. And so each one of these obstacles seem insurmountable, right? He says something like, oh, we need a statement of purpose. And all of these kids, they have no idea what a statement of purpose even is. And, oh no, our strike is ruined. We have no idea what to do. We'll never have a union. And Jack's line there is just, well, must have left in my other pants. And then it keeps on rolling, right? He comes up with these solutions, and his confidence inspires the rest of the Newsies. And that process of like discovering the power that they have together, I think, is an incredible moment in the show.
Well, Diane, it sounds like you've got a couple of really strong actors here and a great show to work with. What do you hope audiences will take away from this production, Diane?
I hope they are just filled to the brim with entertainment. I mean, it's not meant to be a heavy story, even though the foundation of being united and making a change happen is definitely there. It's meant to be entertaining. I hope that they enjoy the music and the dancing, and they just feel the spirits of the youth that are acting and just giving their whole heart and soul out there. And they just feel inspired. That's what we're hoping for.
Well, the Mid-Valley Musical Theater presents the musical Newsies, August 11th through 19th. It's in the Albany Performing Arts Center at West Albany High School, and tickets are available at Albany PAC, like Performing Arts Center, .ludus, LUDUS.com. You can get tickets for all the performances August 11th through 19th online. That's really the best way to get tickets, folks. They will be selling tickets at the door, but no credit cards, just cash or checks only. Thank you so much, Diane Allen, Eli Nicholas, and Curtis Allen, for joining us here on Theater Talk. Break a leg.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Ed. Take care.
It's time to wind up today's KMUZ Theater Talk program. Thank you for joining us. Next week at 9 a.m., you can tune into Talking About Art with Joel Zach. KMUZ Theater Talk is a proud member of the Salem Theater Network.
KMUZ Theater Talk airs at 9 a.m. the first and third Friday of the month at 100.7 and 88.5 FM. and on your favorite radio app or on demand at kmuz.org. You can also listen to our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast anytime on your PC, mobile device, smart speaker, or in your car, wherever you get your podcast.
Ed and I will be back August 18th with a brand new KMUZ Theater Talk program. Meanwhile, check our Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
If you haven't yet joined to support Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, go to kmuz.org right now and click the Contribute button at the top of the page. And thanks. Until next time, we'll see you in the front row.